Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Bella, and I am your host for our webinar today. Today, we actually have Robert Bullock and Diana Saylor bringing you some important information about your SCE retirement plan options. But before I hand it over to them, of course, a few disclosures to share with you. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available to you on our website under the Resources tab and also posted to our YouTube channel in about 2 to 3 weeks here. We'll send out an email so you can expect a notification in your inbox as well. We will actually not be doing a Q&A session at the end of this webinar this time, but we will put up our contact information on our last slide so you can reach out to us individually to help answer your questions that are specific to you. So now that we're all squared away, I'll hand it over to Diana.
Thank you, Bella. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So it has been brought to our attention that there may be some changes at the company. And so we just really wanted to get in front of as many people as possible so that you understand, or it's a reminder of your benefits, how you might commence those benefits if you decide that you want to retire. And hopefully it's not a situation that you do not have a choice. So anyway, we just kind of wanted to get back to basics and go over some items with you. And as Bella said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us and we can answer your specific question. So to get started, today's objectives, we're going to discuss the Edison Pension Plan. We'll go over the differences between the cash balance plan and the grandfathered plan. Then we will shift to the 401k savings plan, followed by the retirement process. We'll discuss the importance of diversification and income in retirement. So first off, talk about getting back to basics. We want to identify the 3 different kinds of money. So first would be the emergency funds. These are funds that you need to have liquid available to you, and it would consist of 3 to 6 months of monthly expenses. Now, not just your mortgage and utilities, it would be everything you spend in 1 month, times it by 3, and that's the minimum that you should have in checking, savings, money market accounts, high yield savings accounts, any vehicle that is liquid. And that, why do we have emergency funds? It's for big ticket items, purchases that we weren't anticipating. We know how that goes. Maybe if you have a change in your employment status, we just want to avoid putting big expenses or unforeseen things on credit cards. We want to always make sure that we have a nice cash cushion. The second type of funds would be intermediate term funds. So these are funds that you may need in maybe 2 to 10 years time. So not anything soon. They're not emergency funds. And actually, I prefer that they're separate from your emergency funds. This would be for circumstances like maybe a car purchase or a down payment on a home or some big ticket item that you want to set funds aside. Now, some people ask us if they should invest the funds, and generally we say no, because you need these funds for a specific purpose. So you could maybe utilize a shorter term CD or maybe treasury, something like that. But generally, we recommend not investing those funds. And in this presentation, we're mainly going to be discussing retirement funds. And so to kick us off, part 1 of the presentation is basically what you should be doing while you're working. And so the first thing is to make sure that you are growing your pot, your nest egg, making it as big as possible. And the reason why is that the bigger your pot is, or the bigger your nest egg is, the more income is available to you. And so you might ask, well, what is part of my retirement nest egg? So there are a variety of things that could be in there. So what encompasses your retirement funds, of course, would be your Edison pension. And again, we'll get into grandfathered versus cash balance here in a second. So you have your pension, you have the 401k, maybe you're part of the stock purchase plan, maybe you have some 401ks from a previous employer or other qualified plan. Maybe you have an IRA that you funded a year or 2 or so, 403Bs, and other savings accounts. So those are just examples of some of the types of accounts that might compromise your in retirement nest egg. So that is what we're going to focus on today, starting with the pension plan. So what we find is obviously the cash balance plan is a little bit more prevalent these days, and it grows based off of pay and interest rates. And the account balance, it determines what your monthly annuity payments will be. And what we find here is that the higher the interest rate is, the higher your lump sum is. So higher interest rate, higher lump sum. Versus grandfathered, how that grows is based off of your time of service or your tenure, your pay, and your age. So it grows differently. The lump sum value of your grandfathered pension is calculated using the present value of future annuity payments. And what we find with the lump sum for the grandfathered plan is that the higher the interest rate, the lower the lump sum. So it's actually backwards. And then just want to make a note that any employees that were hired after 2017, actually the pension isn't even offered. So at the bottom, you can see we've listed interest rates over the last 10 years. And so from 2014 on the far left all the way till about 2021, you can see there's been a gradual decrease over time. And in 2021, the interest rate was just a little bit over 3%. Now, that would have been an opportune time for a grandfathered employee to have retired because the interest rates were as low as we have seen them. So again, lower the interest rate, higher lump sum. And so over the last couple of years, we have seen interest rates go up quite substantially. So this year you can see the interest rate is 5.43, which is advantageous for most employees because they're under the cash balance plan. And, with the grandfathered employees, it's very important to keep track of what interest rates are doing. So this year, like I mentioned, the interest rate is 5.43. At the end of September, that's when the rate comes out for the next year. And so once you have that information, if you're already planning on working, you can decide if you want to utilize this year's rate, or you can commence your benefit right after the new year or whatever time frame you'd like, and you can utilize next year's interest rate. So it's important to keep track of those interest rates. Next, we're going to dive into the 401k. So there are two components of the 401k plan. First is the traditional. That is where you make pre-tax contributions. So your income is reduced by the amount of contributions made to the traditional bucket of the 401k. So you're getting the tax deduction now, but then in retirement, it is taxable at whatever your income tax bracket is at that time. On the other side, we have the Roth 401k, and it's kind of backwards. So contributions are made with after-tax dollars. So you're not getting a tax deduction now, you're paying taxes now, and those funds are growing tax-free. And so some people ask us, well, what should I do? Should I do all traditional? Should I do Roth? Really, it's very individualized. And the other thing is we don't know where tax rates are going to be. And, some people might assume that maybe they're going to make the same or more in retirement. Maybe they're making less in retirement. It's kind of unknown. So we can run some scenarios and talk about that individually, but there is no, I would say, right answer. It's based on each person. And so Edison will match the first 6% that you contribute. Now, keep in mind that those contributions, the 6%, that goes into the traditional side. Now, we always encourage people to at least do 6% because then you're going to get 100% return on your money. If you're putting in 6 and Edison's putting in 6, kind of seems like a no-brainer. But, at a minimum is 6%. What we find is that you really need to be contributing around 15 to 20% to meet your goals. Now, albeit everyone's goals are different. So that's just kind of, general rule of thumb of what we find. Now, if you were hired after 2017, remember I mentioned that you are not eligible for the pension, but what Edison will do is now contribute 10% towards your 401k. And at the bottom, we've listed this year's contribution limits. If you're under age 50, the limit is $23,000. If you're over age 50, you get to take advantage of the catch-up provision. And so the limit is $30,500. And so now let's transition to, we kind of talked about what you should be doing while you're working, saving and doing as much as you can to get that nest egg as big as possible. Now let's get into the actual retirement process. So hopefully you're in a circumstance where you get to choose when you want to retire, but if you do have a change in employment status, some of this information will be very similar. It's just the time frame might be different. And so choosing your retirement date is very important. And so we want to kind of give you the timeline of what that is and how it happens. So in this example, let's assume that your last working day is June 28th. And so what Edison asks is that you notify them at least 30 days prior to your last working day. So in this example, if your last working day is June 28th, you would let them know by May 28th. And then what that will give you is a benefit commencement date of July 1. And so Edison also allows you to tell them up to 3 months early if you'd like, but at a minimum 30 days. So really what happens, you make your decision, you let your manager know first and foremost, and then they start collaborating with payroll. There's kind of two sides, payroll, your final paycheck, there's health benefits, and then also the retirement benefits. So when you contact EIX benefits and you let them know that you have a retirement date and a benefit commencement date, the other thing that you need to do is let them know if you're going to do anything with the pension. Now, Robert's going to get into your options here in a second, but you need to let them know if you want to commence your pension benefit. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. They can send you a packet in the mail. It may need to be notarized depending on if you have a spouse and if you elect the lump sum. Or you can submit it online. So just be mindful that just calling them and telling them that you retired, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to automatically send you this pension election paperwork. So be mindful of that. The other thing that we want to bring to the attention of grandfathered employees. So following this process is important if you're trying to watch out for the interest rate. And so in this case, I would think that most grandfathered employees, maybe you kind of want to, if you're on the fence and you're not really sure if you want to go this year or next year or what have you, or if you have been let go and you haven't made a decision yet, it may still be important to watch what interest rates are doing because your lump sum value is very sensitive to what interest rates are, what's happening with interest rates. So for grandfathered, let me just give a quick example. If you want to use this year's interest rate, the last available benefit commencement date is December 1st. So if it's December 1st, your last working day would be at the end of November, and then you would let Edison know 30 days prior, which would be October 30th. So I hope this makes sense. Now there's a lot of deadlines and dates, but if you have any questions, we can help you kind of come up with the process here. So we just wanted to give an example. And then next, sick time. So if you are unsure what your unused sick leave is, there is a way to find that out. So when you're logged into EIXbenefits.com, go to the pension page, and at the bottom of the screen, I'm pretty sure it says a pension projection estimate or something of that sort. Click on that, and then you'll put in your tentative benefit commencement date, so your last day worked and your benefit commencement date, and then it'll bring up what your unused sick leave is. Also, I forgot to mention a second ago, but some people have asked, am I cash balance? Am I grandfathered? How do I find out if I'm grandfathered? I would say first and foremost, call EIX benefits and confirm that you're grandfathered, but it will show on that pension projection whether or not you're grandfathered or not. So just check there first. So the sick time, for those of you that are non-union, cash balance, unfortunately, there is no sick pay. For those that are union cash balance, you will receive 20% sick time, and that is paid out as a lump sum. And what happens with that is they do a mandatory 20% tax withholding from that amount, and then you'll receive the net. Now, you do have a choice. You can have the sick time paid out directly to you. They do offer direct deposit. You can have it paid out directly to you, or you could decide if you don't need the cash, you could roll it over to your IRA. There is no 20% tax withholding because it's a rollover, and that whole amount is not taxable because you're rolling it into an IRA. So that is another option. Grandfathered employees, you also get 20%, and you also have the same options as far as having the sick pay paid out to you or rolling it over, but you have a third option. You could decide to take that amount in monthly payments. So it's just one additional option. And then vacation pay, that is paid out to you with your final paycheck. I have heard that I think it's two separate payments. So you'll get your final pay and then vacation pay is separate, but it does happen at the same time. The sick pay, I didn't mention, the sick pay is actually paid out 1 month after your benefit commencement date. So I mentioned before, we had that example of July 1st being your benefit commencement date. So the sick pay and the pension won't be sent out until the beginning of August. So, if you have a circumstance where maybe you have some vacation or no vacation and more sick pay, and you're relying on that sick pay, be mindful that it won't be paid out until a month later. But vacation, that is paid out with your final pay. And of course, it's taxed as ordinary income tax. And as far as healthcare, we know there have been some changes. We don't pretend to know all about it. So we really encourage you to call the benefit center and just make sure that you understand exactly what is happening with your health benefits. And so now I'd like to transition over to Robert, and he will explain the options for your retirement plans.
Thank you, Diana. Well, some big decisions that you have to make when you decide to leave the company, or if they've decided to end the relationship. First the pension, then the 401k. And I always tell the employees, take it one step at a time. I know the situation can be overwhelming and all the decisions that you have to make, but I would take it one step at a time. And really the only decision that you need to make before you leave the company is, what do you do with the Edison pension? Here you have three choices. On the left is take the entire balance, that lump sum balance, and put it into your savings and checking account. And the bottom of the page, it shows there's taxes if you do that. If you keep the money and you're under the age of 55, you're going to pay both income taxes and a penalty. It can get very expensive. If you're 55 and older and you take the entire balance and put it in your savings and checking, you'll just pay regular income taxes. But that could be quite expensive. Your second choice, the middle choice, is to get the value of that lump sum and give it to the company. And the company is going to pay you a pension and annuity for the rest of your life. And if you're married, joint with both you and your spouse. And sometimes I would hear from employees, I'm going to take the pension annuity because there's no risk. And there isn't any market risk, but there's two risks associated with it. There's an estate risk. If there was a desire after you and your spouse have passed to pass that money on to the kids, that's not what the pension annuity is for. Once you both pass, the company keeps the remaining amount. The second risk is an inflation risk. And I contrast the pension annuity to Social Security. Social Security is indexed to inflation. And so Social Security goes up when inflation goes up. Corporate pensions are not indexed to inflation. And so the monthly amount that they guarantee you for the rest of your life, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years into retirement, is going to be the same amount. And so it's if inflation continues to go up, that dollar amount is going to buy you less and less. But one of the joys of the pension annuity is that you have no market risk, no stock or bond market risk. And that contrasts to the third choice on your right. You take the value of that pension lump sum, you can roll it into an IRA, you can roll it into your Edison 401k and invest it, or if you decide to continue to work for another firm, you can maybe roll it into the new employees or employer's plan. and any rollover, there's no taxes involved. And even though it's not listed, I'll say there's really a fourth choice that you have in deciding what to do with your Edison pension. And it's really, you don't have to make a decision up until age 65. You could, in theory, leave it at the company. And the good and the bad associated that if it's under the cash balance program, then that is continuing to earn interest. If you're under the grandfather, the older program, as Diana had indicated earlier, part of the calculation for the grandfather pension is tenure. So obviously, if you leave the company, that grandfather pension is no longer growing. So that's the Edison pension. Next, after you leave the company, you've got a decision to make as to what do you do with your Edison 401k. And the choices are very similar. You could, on the left-hand side, take the entire balance of that 401k, roll it into your savings and checking account. And once again, the magic age, if you do that, is 55 and older. You would just pay income taxes. If you deposit the money and you're under the age of 55, there's both income taxes and a penalty. It can get quite expensive. The middle choice is you leave the entire balance of your 401k in the 401k after you leave. The problem is, if you ever wanted to make a withdrawal, Edison has a all or nothing. So if you ever wanted, let's say, to take $10,000 out, you wanted to purchase a new car, Edison's going to require that you close the entire 401k. It's an all or nothing decision. And lastly, at any time after you left the company, you have the option of taking the value of that 401k and rolling it into an IRA, into another 401k or employer plan if you choose to. And once again, any rollover is considered tax-free. There's no taxes due. So that's the decision regarding the 401k and the pension. Let's go to the next slide. Now let's start planning for that retirement income. So how much do you need when you decide to retire? Commonly, we tell clients you really don't need 100% of your last paycheck. A good starting point for financial planning is maybe 75% of that last salary. Why less? Well, hopefully by this time, your house is paid off and you're not making a mortgage payment. You don't have any credit card debt. You're debt free. The kids are hopefully through college and you have no college expenses anymore. And since you left the company, you're fully retired. You're not making contributions into retirement plans. And so you may not need 100% of your last salary, but it really is dependent upon what your retirement's going to be. What are you going to do? You're going to stay home and wash the dog, or are you going to travel the world and play golf? And so we need to do some planning. First, let's identify sources of income. You may have IRAs that are out there. You may have pensions and annuities that you're receiving. You may not fully retire. You could continue to work part-time. You could also downsize, maybe the sale of your home or your business. And lastly, let's look into what type of Social Security income that you're going to get. So that's where we start. It's a beginning point. The other thing is, how much should I take from my retirement account? So you got a nest egg, you have a pot of money, as Diana had talked about. This is an example where a modest withdrawal rate can increase the longevity of your portfolio. This is, let's say, a 65-year-old who decides to retire with a $500,000 portfolio. And the first jagged line down, because this money was invested in a balanced portfolio of stocks and bonds, but we're using a terrible market environment. This is beginning in the year 2000. So let's take a worst case scenario. And so the first jagged line down is an 8% withdrawal rate on that $500,000. That's $40,000 a year that you're taking out during a terrible market. Unfortunately, in about 10 to 12 years, you're going to be out of money, about 75, 76. The next jagged line down to the right is a 7% withdrawal rate. Last a little bit longer, about 15 years to when you're about 80. The third line to the right is considered a 6% withdrawal rate. It gets you to about 2019, about 19 years after you retire, about age 84. What we always suggest to clients, regardless of the pot of money, is if you could live off of 5 or 4% withdrawal rate, it can be a very good thing for the longevity of your portfolio. The yellow line to the right shows that it's going down, but it's still at 23 years after your retirement. What, you're 88 years old? There's still about $200,000 left. And lastly, the last line that actually is going up, that's a 4% withdrawal rate. You've taken 4% out of the portfolio for over 23 years, and you actually have more than what you started with. And this is through a terrible stock market. So once again, a modest withdrawal rate can increase the longevity of your portfolio, and you never run out of cash. So let's go to the next line. And you got to decide, what do I invest in? Well, this reminds me of a chemistry chart in high school. And so we've listed on the right-hand side each year, and beginning in 2003, going from top to bottom, all your investment choices. And we wanted to see which was the best performing investment that year at the top, followed at the bottom, what was the worst performing investment. And in 2023, large cap stocks in the United States were up 26%. And the worst performing investment at the bottom of 2023 is commodities, down almost 8%. Well, we ran it from 2008 to 2023. And what's interesting is, notice that there's no one color always at the top. The best investments go in and out of style. So don't chase investments. My perfect example is 2009. At the top, it shows EM equity, emerging market stocks, up an amazing 79%. So you get to your desk in 2010, and you see the best performing investment was emerging market stocks in 2009. I don't want you to put all your money in emerging market stocks, because by the end of 2011, notice that emerging market stocks were the worst performing investment. We would prefer the box in the middle called asset allocation. This is a balanced portfolio of around 60% in stocks and 40% bonds. What's amazing is it's never at the top as the best performing group, but more importantly, it's never at the bottom at the worst performing group. And if you look all the way to the left, annualized out, a balanced portfolio, an asset allocated portfolio has averaged during this time period about an 8% return. Once again, if you could live off of 4 or 5% withdrawal rate, and if your portfolio is doing 8, you'll never run out of cash. And better yet, you don't have to worry about it. And so keep that in mind. Don't chase returns, and keep a balanced portfolio, especially when you're retired and you're living off of it. We love this phrase, diversification is about accepting good enough returns while missing out on great, but avoiding the terrible. That's so true. Keep diversified. And so ask yourself these questions if you're really getting close to retirement, or at least thinking about retirement. Do I have enough to retire? How much income will my investment generate? And you contrast that with, how much do you need every month to live off of? When should I start Social Security benefits? Should I start it early at 62? Should I wait until my full retirement age? Or can I wait until 70? How will I pay for healthcare and medical expenses? And how can I protect my capital from a potential market crash like 2008? We have some answers for you. We've been doing this for 30 years, and this may be your first retirement. This is Diana and ours, probably 300th retirement we tell clients. Well, this is the team at KWB. We're here to help you, guide you through the process. Don't be overwhelmed. We'll take it step by step. And let's go to the next slide. Once again, we do offer a complimentary consultation. Keep that in mind. We're here to help you. And I think, Bella, you got some closing comments.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana and Robert, for all that information you shared. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. As I said before, a recording of this webinar will be made available to you on our website and our YouTube channel in about 2 to 3 weeks. So you can look forward to that and look for an email reminder in your inbox. You'll receive an email from me here shortly with a short survey asking for your feedback. We would greatly appreciate you taking the time to fill that out so we can hear your thoughts on how we did today, and or if there's any other things you'd like us to discuss in our future webinars. Again, if you have any questions, we have this information on the screen here. Feel free to give us a call or send us an email, and we'll make sure to get back to you with answers to your specific questions. And with that, thank you again for joining us today, and have a great evening.